Good afternoon, Tristan.
I would just like to welcome you guys to our production of The Effect of Gamma Rays on Man in the Moon Marigolds. I would like to ask you guys to turn off all phones and noise-making devices right now. And it's going to get kind of hot in here, so that's for you guys to bear with us. We'll be having a 15-minute intermission later on in the play, so enjoy.
Like that. He barely says a word around here. I always say some people were born to speak and others just to listen. You know, I've been meaning to call you and thank you for that lovely rabbit you gave Matilda. She and I just adored, and it's gotten so big. Well, it sure was thoughtful, Mr. Goodman. I don't mean to change the subject, but aren't you that delightful young man Tilly said hello to a couple of months back at the AMP? You were by the lobster tank, and I was by the frozen foods. That delightful and handsome young man. Why, yes, indeed, I'd use the expression handsome. Yes, and... well, I encourage her at every opportunity at home. Did she say I didn't? Both my children have their own desks, and I put 75-watt bulbs right near them. Yes. Yes. I think those tests are very much overrated anyway, Mr. Goodman. Well, believe me, she's nothing like that around this house. Now, I don't want you to think I don't appreciate what you're trying to do, Mr. Goodman, but I'm afraid it's simply useless. I'd say as long as she's doing well in your class, that's all you should be concerned about. I'm sure with all those modern techniques you must have, you'll be able to bring her out. That is the phrase, isn't it? Just as well as anyone. I've tried just everything, but she isn't a pretty girl. I mean, let's be frank, she's going to have her problems. But with all your charm and patience, I'm sure she'll respond and improve to your satisfaction. Are you married, Mr. Goodman? Oh, that's too bad. I don't know what's wrong with women today, letting a handsome young man like you get away. Well, some days she just doesn't feel like going to school. You just said how bright she is. And I'm really afraid to put too much of a strain on her after what happened to her brother. You know, too much strain is the worst thing in this modern world, Mr. Goodman. And I can't afford to have another convulsive on my hands now, can I? You know, I can't tell you how happy I am that you called. Why, believe it or not, you're the first teacher that's ever taken the trouble to call me as a preventative measure. And I truly appreciate that, Mr. Goodman. Oh, the other teachers call when the damage has been done. But I doubt that Charles would have had that breakdown if those other teachers would have taken the trouble to call me. Well, he's never acted strange at home. But don't you worry about Matilda. There'll be some place for her in this world someday. And it's like I said. Some people were born to speak and others just to listen. And do call again, Mr. Goodman. It's been a true pleasure speaking with you. Goodbye. Matilda. That wasn't very nice of you to tell them that I've been forcibly detaining you from school. By the way Mr. Goodman spoke, he must think I'm running a concentration camp. Do you have any idea how embarrassing it is to be accused of running a concentration camp on your own children? Why? It isn't embarrassing at all. That school of yours is 40 years behind the times, and believe me, you learn more around here than anything that ugly Mr. Goodman can teach you. You know, I really feel sorry for him. I've never met a man with a more effeminate face in my life. When I saw you talking to him about a lobster tank, I said to myself, good Lord, for a science teacher, my poor girl's got herself a Hebrew hermaphrodite. But it's a little better than Miss Hanley. The idea of having her teach girls gym is staggering. And you have to place me in the embarrassing position of giving them a reason to call me at 8:30 in the morning, no less.
I didn't say anything.
What do you tell them when they want to know why you stay home once in a while?
I tell them I'm sick.
Oh, you're sick, all right. The exact nature of the illness isn't fully realized, but you're sick, all right. Any daughter that would turn her mother in as the administrator of a concentration camp has got to be suffering from something very peculiar.
Can I go in today, Mother?
You'll go in, all right.
Mr. Goodman said he's going to do an experiment.
Why, he seemed like the type that would do his experimenting after sundown.
On radioactivity.
On radioactivity? That's just what that high school needs.
He's going to bring in the cloud chamber.
Oh, what an outstanding event! If you would have warned me, I would have gotten just a killing gone with you today. I just love seeing cloud chambers being brought in.
You can actually see.
You're giving me a headache.
Please?
No, my dear. The fortress of knowledge will not be blessed by your presence today. I have a number of exciting duties for you to take care of, not the least of which is rabbit droppings.
Oh, Mother, please. I'll do it after school.
If we wait 1 minute longer, this house is going to ferment. I found rabbit droppings in my bedroom even this time. And if you don't start moving, you're going to smell Hassenpfeffer.
I could do it after Mr. Goodman's class. I'll say I'm ill and ask for a sick pass.
Do you want me to chloroform the thing right now?
No!
Then shut up.
You have my devil scent down there?
It's in the bathroom cabinet.
There's so much junk in here, it's driving me crazy.
Maybe it's in my purse. If you don't hurry up, you're going to be late for school.
Well, I couldn't very well go in without devil scent now, could I?
Doesn't anyone go to school these days without bathing in that rancid stench?
Nobody I know except Tilly, that is. And maybe if she had a little on yesterday, I bet they wouldn't have laughed so much at her.
Why were they laughing?
The assembly. Didn't she tell you about the assembly?
Charles, you never told me she was in an assembly.
Well, I just thought of it right now. How could I tell you anything until I think of it? Did you ever stop to consider that? Some crummy science assembly.
What is he talking about?
I thought she would have told the whole world. Imagine, standing right in front of the assembly with everybody laughing at her.
Charles, will you be quiet? Why were they laughing at you?
I don't know.
You don't know? My heavens, she was a sight. She had that old jumper on, the faded one with the low collar, and a raggedy slip that showed all over, and her hair looked like old spaghetti.
You're exaggerating.
And she was cranking this model of something.
The atom.
This model of the atom. You know, it had a huge crank and a long tower, so that when you cranked it, these little colored balls went spinning around like crazy. And there was Tilly cranking away, looking weird as a coot. That old jumper with the raggedy slip and the spaghetti hair, pranking away while some boy with glasses was reading the stupid speech, and everybody burst into laughter until the teachers yelled at them. And all day long, the kids kept coming up to me saying, "Is that really your sister? How can you bear it?" And you know, Christina Burns says to me, "She looks like the one who went to the loony doctors." I could have kissed her right there and then.
Matilda, if you can't get yourself dressed properly to go to school, you're never going to go again. I don't like the idea of everyone laughing at you, because when they laugh at you, they're laughing at me. And I don't want you cranking any more atoms.
I'm almost out of double scent.
It would last longer if you didn't put so much on.
Who's that calling?
Matilda turned me to the Gestapo.
Can I have a cigarette this morning? Was it Mr. Goodman?
Who?
The call this morning. Was it Mr. Goodman?
Yes.
I figured it would be.
A little higher, please.
There?
Yes, there. How did you figure it would be Mr. Goodman?
Well, he called me out of sewing class yesterday. I remember because my shirt wasn't all buttoned. And he wanted to know why Tilly's out of school so much.
A little lower. And what did you tell him?
I wish you'd switch back to Cools. I like Cools better.
What did you tell him?
I told him you were ill and he wanted to know what kind, so I told him you had leprosy.
You didn't!
And I told him you had ringworm and gangrene.
What did he say?
And I told him you had mother's last patient had. Whatchamacallit?
Impetigo?
Yeah, something like that.
Tell me you didn't, Charles.
Okay, I did it. But I really did.
He knew you were joking.
And I told him to look up the history and that he'd find out. Whenever they look up the history, they don't bother me anymore because they think I'm crazy.
Charles.
And I told him the disease you had was fatal and that there wasn't much hope for you.
What kind of history is it?
Just a little folder with the story of our lives in it. That's all.
How did you ever see it?
I read it last term when Miss Hanley dragged me into the record room because I didn't want to climb the ropes in gym. And I told him my skull was growing.
A little lower.
Lower, higher? I wish you'd make up your mind. You know, if you switch back to Cools, it might be worth it, but these are awful. You know, I really did think my skull was growing. Either that or a tumor. So she dragged me into gym class and thought I couldn't read upside down while she sat opposite me with the history. But I could.
What did it say?
Oh, it says that you're divorced and that I went crazy and that my father took a heart attack at Star Lake. And now you're a widow.
That's it. Hold it right there.
And it says that I exaggerate and tell stories and that I'm afraid of death and have nightmares. And all that stuff.
And what else does it say?
I can't remember everything, you know.
If you don't hurry up, we're going to be late for school.
Remember this, remember that. This, that, this, that, this, that, this, that.
Today I saw it. From behind the glass, a white cloud began to form. He placed a small piece of metal in the center of the chambers, and we waited until I saw the first one. A trace of smoke that came from nowhere and then disappeared. And then another and another, until I knew it was coming from the metal. They looked like water sprays from a park fountain. And it went on and on for as long as I watched. And he told me the fountain of smoke would come forth for a long time. And if I wanted to, I could have stayed there all my life and it would never have ended. The fountain so close I could have touched it. In front of my eyes, one part of the world was becoming another. Atoms exploding, flinging off tiny bullets that caused the fountain. Atom after atom, breaking down into something new. And no one could stop the would go on for millions of years. On and on, this fountain from eternity.
I thought we had everything. But leave it to you to think of the one thing we're missing. $22 acres in Princess Bay, small pond, $6,000. That's cheap. I'd take a look at it if I had any money. What kind of seeds are they?
Marigolds, they're exposed to cobalt 60.
If there's one thing I've always wanted, it's been a living room planted with marigolds that have been exposed to cobalt 60. While you're at it, why don't you throw in a tomato patch in the bathroom?
Just let me keep them here for a week or so until they get started, and then I'll transplant them to the backyard.
4-family house, 6.5 and 6.5 over 5 and 5. 8 garages. I could really do something with that. A nursing home. Don't think I'm not kicking myself that I didn't finish that real estate course. I should have finished beauty school too. God, what I could do with 8 garages. You know, I've been thinking about getting rid of that and making this place into something.
Yes?
I've been thinking about a tea shop. Have you noticed there aren't too many of them around anymore?
Yes.
And this is just the type of neighborhood where a good tea shop would really make a go of it. I'd have a good cheesecake. You gotta have a good cheesecake. $64 a month at the garages alone. I swear, money makes money. What is cobalt 60?
It's something that changes its seeds. Oh, Mother, he set up the cloud chamber for me. And he told me about radioactivity and half-life, and he got the seeds for me.
What does half-life mean?
The half-life of polonium-210 is 140 days. The half-life of radium-226 is 1,490 years. The half-life of polonium-210 is 4.5 billion years.
Do you know you're giving me a headache? Look who's there! It's Natty! Natty came all the way out by herself. I'm gonna use a cigarette for this. Hi, Natty! You come sit down and we'll be right with her. You know, sometimes I gotta laugh. I've got this on my hands and all you're worried about is planting marigolds. Alley-oop! Happy landing! I've got hot sea water for you, Natty. Would you like some hot sea water and honey? I've never seen it to fail. Every time I decide to have a cup of coffee, I see this face at the curtains. I wonder what she'd do if I just poured this right over her head. I bet she wouldn't even notice. Nanny's going to get just what she needs. You know, if someone told me when I was young that I'd end up feeding honey to a zombie, I'd tell them they were crazy. something wrong, Natty? Did I forget Natty's spoon? Mercy, mercy, I forgot Natty's spoon! I'll get you a spoon, Natty. I'll get you a spoon. Matilda, watch me give Natty her spoon. A spoon for Natty! $50 a week. $50. I look at you, Natty, and I wonder if it's worth it. Sometimes I think I'd be better off driving a cab. Take honey, Natty! Honey with hot sea water! You should have seen her daughter bring her here last week. I could have used you that day. And she came in here pretending she was Miss Career Woman of the Year. She said she was in real estate, and such a busy little woman. Such a busy little woman, she just couldn't give all the love and care and affection her little mumsy needed anymore. Natty's quite some little cross to bear, aren't you, Natty? But she's a little better than Mr. Mayo was, with a tumor on his brain. Or Miss Marian Minto with her cancer. Or Mr. Brown. What was his first name?
Alexander.
Mr. Alexander Brown with the worms in his legs. Natty's quite some little girl, aren't you, Natty? A little girl drinking her hot tea and honey. Cold 60. You take me for a fool, don't you?
No, Mother.
Science, science, science. Don't they teach our misfits anything anymore? Anything decent? Sensitive? Meaningful? Do you know what I'd be now if it wasn't for this mud pool I got sucked into? I'd probably be a dancer. Miss Betty Frank, the best dancer of the class of 19... something. 1 minute, I'm the best dancer in school, smart as a whip, the head of the whole crowd. And the next minute, ta-da! One mistake. That's how it starts. Marry the wrong man, and before you know it, he's got you tied down with 2 stones around your neck for the rest of your life. When I was going to that lousy high school, I was the most respected kid you ever saw. I've always wondered why people always say, why just yesterday? Why just yesterday? Why just yesterday? Before I knew it, I lost my dancing legs and got varicose legs. Beautiful varicose legs. Chop, chop, chop. Do you know everything I ever thought I'd be has exploded? Hurry up with that honey, Natty! Exploded. You know, I almost forgot everything I was supposed to be. Natty's almost finished! Isn't that wonderful? She's almost finished, all right. Natty's daughter is coming to see her soon. Will that make Natty happy? The day Miss Career Woman of the Year decides to visit, I think I'll drop dead. Nobody's too busy for anything they want to do. Don't you tell me. What kind of an idiot do people take me for? Don't they know I can see right through them? Miss Career Ostrich of the Year. Natty! You're spilling your hot tea. Judas, come right out and open that tea shop tomorrow. Oh, it's coming. I can feel it. And the first thing I'll do is get rid of that rabbit.
Yes, Mother.
You think I'm kidding?
No, I don't.
You bet I'm not. I was going to do this a month ago. Here it is. Here's a new word for you. Trichloromethane. Do you know what that is, Matilda? Well, it's chloroform. I'm saving it for the Angora manure machine of yours. And speaking of manure machines, is Natty ready to go make duty? Natty's always ready for duty, aren't you, Natty? Because Natty's a good goody girl. And good goody girls get good goody things. Good goody girls get hot tea and honey. Right, Natty? Half-life. You want to know what a half-life is, Matilda? Just ask me. You're looking at the original half-life. I've got one child with half a mind, another who's half a test tube, half a husband, a house half full of rabbit crap, and half a corpse. That's what I call half-life, Matilda. Me and Kobold 60. Two of the biggest half-lives you ever saw. Mr. Goodman, please. How would I know if he's got a class? Mr. Goodman? Are you Mr. Goodman? Oh. I beg your pardon, Miss Torgerson. Yes, I'll wait. Couldn't you find him, Miss Torgerson? Oh, excuse me, Mr. Goodman, how are you? I'll bet you'll never guess who this is. It's Mrs. Hunsdorfer. Remember, the frozen foods? You know, Charles tells me he's your secretary at school, and I certainly think that's a delight. You've been paying so much attention to Matilda, I'll bet Charles just got jealous. He does things like that, you know. Well, I hope he works hard for you. Although, I can't imagine what kind of work Charles would be doing in that great big science office. He's a terrible snoop. The attendance! Isn't that charming? And the cut cards! Imagine, you trust him with... Why, I didn't know he could type at all. Imagine. Of course, too much work isn't good for anybody either, Mr. Goodman. No wonder he's failing everything. I mean, I've never met a boy who's failed absolutely everything, regardless of what he's suffering from. I suppose I should say recovering from. Yes, I'll tell you why I'm calling. It's about those seeds you gave Matilda. She's had them in the house for a while now, and they're starting to grow. Now, she tells me they've been exposed to radioactivity, and I hear such terrible things about radioactivity that I naturally associate radioactivity with sterility. And it positively horrifies me to have those plants in my living room.